In today's video, we are going to be building an AI agent that can act for you as a business consultant. Starting a business can be really difficult. Most people want to just dive straight in, getting their hands dirty, building things and selling something, which generally is not a bad option. But the thing that often gets overlooked and very often undervalued is the in-depth and meticulous research that you should put into a business idea. This includes researching other tools that are out there at the moment, the market size, your competitors, and where you could add a unique selling point into the market. What we're going to do today is build an AI agent that can give us all of this advice, provide really in-depth insights, and even email me a report based off of just a business idea that I have. As always, the step-by-step instructions will be included on the GitHub repository, which I am currently showing on screen now. And for this, we'll be using a combination of tools. We'll be using N8n, which is a really powerful workflow automation tool, and it's really good in terms of building AI agents as well. We'll be using Claude as the underlying LLM, but this can be swapped out for any other LLM provider that you prefer to use. And we'll be using the Gmail API to send the email report at the end. Now, keep in mind, this build that I'll show you is very modular. Things can be swapped out, models can be changed, APIs can be updated. So really, this should be used as a template, which you can customize for your own use cases. Now, when I tested this, the overall testing and building of this agent costed me less than 20 cents in LLM fees. This was mainly because I was using one of the older models, but realistically, if I was to put this into production, I would definitely use one of the more modern models, which are slightly more expensive, but still very affordable. This would just improve the overall performance of the system. But for this demonstration and this walkthrough, I'll be using one of the cheaper models, simply just to show you how it's done. So enough talking, let's start building. Now, you may have used N8n before. It's a really powerful workflow automation tool, and it allows you to connect all different types of tools, services, and APIs into really powerful flows. Now, N8n can be used as a web dashboard, and you can subscribe, create an account, and pay to use their service. Or what's really nice about N8n is that you can actually run this locally or host it on your own server as a Docker container. So I'm going to show you how you can run this locally on your own machine. So if I come back to the GitHub repository, all the steps that we need are over here. I'm testing this on a Windows machine and I'm using Docker Desktop version 4.31.1. First thing I need to do is open up Docker Desktop. Now, if I come back to the instructions, if you don't have Docker Desktop installed, then you can follow the link here and install it onto your computer. This will work across all different operating systems. I've actually included a link here to the official N8n documentation to install N8n locally on your computer. So you can follow this link if you wish, and you can follow the instructions on this page. But for now, I've actually just summarized the steps I need to do in this code snippet here. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create a storage volume for N8n. When you run N8n locally on your machine, it will use a local SQLite database to persist data. Obviously, if you destroy the container, then that database will not be available anymore. But you can actually connect the local N8n instance or a remote instance that you deploy to your own database as well. It gives some documentation around connecting it to a Postgres database on the website. Now, I'm just going to run it locally with SQLite. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up a terminal window. I'm just going to use PowerShell for this, but you could use any other terminal. And I'm going to create this volume. Very simple. The next step is pulling the image from the remote image repository and running the container. So you'll notice that I don't have the image saved locally, so it's pulling the image. It's downloading the image. The image is quite large. It's around 750 megabytes, I believe. So it might take a little bit of time just to download. So now that the image has been pulled, the container starts automatically because of the command that we ran. So it's now actually telling me that I can visit the N8n instance in the browser, just running on localhost. So I can copy this address and I can open this up in a web browser. Now, I have already built this agent and all the different tools that we need, but to walk you through, I'm actually going to delete all of this and start from scratch. So now we've got a fresh start. Let's start building our workflow. Now, any automation in general, but on N8n in particular, starts with some kind of trigger. And in this instance, we're going to trigger this AI agent based on a chat message. There's some configuration that you can do here, but really this is just quite simple. What's really nice about this chat message feature as well is that you can actually make it publicly available, which means that once we're happy with the automation, it will give us this URL that we can paste into the web browser and we can test the automation from. We'll come back to that a little bit later. For now, you can fiddle around with this and you can change the name of your AI agent. There's not really too much configuration that we need to do here. The main bulk of the work is going to be on actually building and configuring the AI agent. So if I come back to the GitHub repository, To give a little bit of context, as I said, we're using N8n as the orchestration platform for the automation. In terms of AI, once again, N8n has some really nice packaged AI agent functionality, which we'll be going through in just a moment. There's many different types of AI agents, but we're going to be building a tools agent in our example here. As I said before, we'll be using Claude as the underlying LLM. Therefore, you will need access to API keys if you decide to use Claude or whatever other AI LLM you choose to use. And at the end, there'll be an email which will be sent. And for this, we'll be using the Gmail API. You'll also need access to Google Cloud Console for your Gmail account so that you can create a client ID and a client secret. I won't be going through that in massive amounts of detail throughout this video. I have included some links in the documentation on the README site to help you with that. But for now, let's focus on the building. So we've created the local N8n instance. The first thing that we need to do is start building the tools agent in N8n. Now, a tools agent is a style of AI agent which utilizes a set of tools that the AI has available to then dynamically decide which tool to use at any given moment. The main advantage of a tool-based AI agent compared to a workflow that you would typically create in a more linear fashion is that these AI agents can dynamically decide and reason if or when they should use certain tools. So you give the AI agent a prompt and you give the AI agent access to all these different functionalities in the form of tools. So for example, it'll be to conduct some research, to send an email, to get some data from somewhere. And the AI agent will use its intelligence to decide if or when it should use each of those tools. And you'll see this working dynamically in N8n. So the first thing that we need to do is create this AI agent. And as I've explained, I've included prompts that you can use for each of the AI components within N8n on the GitHub repository. So I'm just going to copy this prompt for now. I'm not going to walk through too much in terms of what the prompt is and the structure of the prompts, but please do use this as a template. But to give some context, we're building a business consultant. As I said before, the input to the business consultant will be a business idea. This idea may be very vague. It might not be fully formed, but really what I want from this AI agent is an understanding of whether this is a good business idea or not, what the opportunity is, and perhaps how I should start executing on this business idea. So there's a number of things that I need the AI agent to accomplish and complete, which I've detailed in the task subsection here within the first prompt. So the first thing that I want the AI agent to do is to go out onto the internet and to find a maximum of 5 businesses that sell tools, products, or services similar to my business idea. Then, if there are similar businesses, I then want the agent to use openly available data to estimate the value of these tools that the businesses are selling. And the valuation should be in terms of annual recurring revenue in Great British pounds. After that, if there are similar businesses, perform a Whitespace analysis to identify the unique selling points that I should focus on with my business. And then based on the Whitespace analysis, recommend the best target audience that I should go after. And be as specific as possible in this case. Finally, based on all this information, extrapolate the relevant industry that is most appropriate and estimate the total addressable market size in terms of GBP and number of people. And then finally, condense and combine all of this insight into a report, no more than 3,000 words. And finally, this will then be emailed to me. So let's get into actually building this now. Let's copy this prompt. Let's come over to N8n and let's add the AI agent. So when you add nodes into the N8n workflow, you have a whole bunch of different types of nodes that you can use. I'm not going to go into detail in this video about all the different nodes that you have available. I'm just going to focus on what we need for this task. And what we need right now is an AI agent. When you open up the AI agent, you'll have a whole bunch of different configuration settings that you can choose. The first thing is you need to configure the input that comes into this. So for this example, we can leave it as it is. The source for this node will be the connected chat trigger node, which is the input that will be provided through the chat interface. So that's fine. What's really nice about these AI agents as well, and any of the AI modules, is that you can require the AI nodes to output the information in a specific format. This is really useful if you are returning a response to an API, for example, but then also just in terms of structuring the output of the AI nodes in a particular way. So in this example, we will be using a structured format. So I can tick this checkbox here. And then finally, at the bottom, we want to add a system message. This is going to be the prompt that gets passed along with the user input to the LLM. When you update prompts in N8n, you have two options. You can use static text, this fixed option, or you can use an expression. In the expression, you can use JavaScript to dynamically add data into the prompt. Most of the time, we'll be using expressions because we'll need to be referencing data that comes through the workflow. For now, I've already formatted all of the prompts, so I'm simply going to change this to an expression, make this full screen, and then paste the entire prompt here. Now I can come out of this node here. Now this AI agent isn't ready. We need to add a few more things to it. We're also going to add some memory into this AI agent. Now memory is important because especially in a conversational interface, the AI agent needs to be able to have some recollection of what you said before. So for example, if I ask it about an idea and then I ask it to revise the idea or update it based on some new information, the AI agent needs to be able to know what you asked before and what its response was before. And therefore, we're going to add some memory to allow this to happen. For now, we're going to use some simple memory. We can connect to other external memory sources, but we're just going to use some simple memory, which don't require any credentials. There's not too much that we need to configure here. The only thing that you might want to consider is the context window length. This is basically the number of messages that the AI agent will use as its history. So anything older than 5 messages old, it will ignore essentially in this example. You can increase this, but obviously it will increase the cost of the LLM usage as well. We then need to configure the LLM model that the AI agent is going to use. As I said before, we're going to be using Claude for this example. So I'm going to select Anthropic. Now I've already uploaded my credentials into my N8n account. If you're new to this and you haven't uploaded any credentials, then you can create some new credentials here. This is where you'll need to put your API key in, and you can choose which model that we want to use. For this example, I'm going to be using one of the older and cheaper models, but you can swap this out very, very easily, simply by choosing one of the options here. You can also configure some of the hyperparameters as well, such as the temperature, the sampling, that sort of stuff, but I'm just going to leave this as it is for now. That's great. And for the output parser, once again, I've included a snippet on the GitHub repository of what the JSON schema should look like for this example. Now, you will need to update this based on your requirements when you're building this. But for this example to work, you can essentially just add a structured output parser, like so. Choose the define below option, and then paste it into here. Now, this structured output parser uses something called a JSON schema. This JSON schema defines exactly how the output should look in terms of the different objects, all of the keys, all of the values, and the expected data types for all of these as well. Now, to give you a slightly quicker way of doing this, writing JSON schema like this can take quite a long time. So what I actually did instead was I gave ChatGPT a snippet of what the output data could look like, and I basically asked ChatGPT to convert this into a valid JSON schema, and it does that really easily. So I would definitely use that if I was you. Let's save this. So right now we have a very simple AI agent. The AI agent knows the overall task that we're trying to accomplish. It has an underlying LLM attached to it. It has some memory, and it has a structured output parser as well. However, we need to start adding some tools to this agent. The tools are going to be what allows the agent to actually perform all the things that we need it to do on the input message. So if I make a little bit of room on the canvas here, let's start adding these tools. If I come back to the GitHub repository, the first tool that we're going to add is the Find Similar Tools tool. So let me copy this prompt. So this tool will actually be using another N8n workflow. So this is what's really nice about N8n is that you can connect workflows together and use workflows as tools for another tool. You could even use another AI agent as a tool for this AI agent. For now, we're going to create another N8n workflow tool. We're going to call this Find Similar Tools. Find Similar Tools. What's also important is to appropriately give a description for these tools as well, because the AI agent will use these descriptions to then decide whether or not it needs to use this tool. And then you can choose a workflow. Now, at the moment, I don't have any other workflows to choose from, so I actually need to create a new workflow. As you can see, the trigger is already set up to be when executed by another workflow, which is fine. What we can do here is we can define the input data schema that we need. So for example, let's just say that we're going to provide it some text from the main workflow automation. We can remove this, and rather than using another AI agent, we can literally just use a basic LLM chain, which would essentially just be a single call to an LLM. Now, we're not using a chat trigger node, therefore we need to define the input data ourselves. Now, at the moment, I don't have any data to reference. So if I execute the previous nodes, it will basically show me that, okay, the previous node is a trigger which has some data called text. So I can drag this in and I can say, use this as the input. Now, for these tools where we're utilizing LLMs, I'm actually not going to use the specific output formatting parser. The reason why is because the AI agent will be able to collect all the information that all the tools provides. And really, I want the AI agent node in the previous automation to focus on structuring the output. If I start to become very particular about how the output is being formatted in all of these different tools, it essentially just means more points for failure, because sometimes, based on the output of the LLMs, if the output from the LLM doesn't quite match the specific format that we need, it can cause breakages. So I'm going to be less particular about how these tools output their information and focus more on the overall AI agent formatting the data the way that I want. You can output parsers for these tools if you want, but I find that it works much better to actually let these tools be a little bit more free and just ensure that the AI agent outputs the information how we want it. So then the only other configuration that we need to do here is the prompt. So if I add the prompt, come over to expression, put this into here, this is all we need. It's a very basic prompt. Literally all this tool will be doing is finding a maximum of 5 businesses that sells tools, products or services similar to the business idea that I provided. So it's very important to keep these tools very modular so that the AI agent knows which tool to use in which situation. Think of a tool as a piece of functionality that you would use to complete a single atomic task. So I can come out of this, I can save this. I just need to connect a model to this. Once again, I'm going to use Claude, model, and that's literally all we need. So now we can actually test this. It's not going to come back with anything because there's no input text that's actually coming through, but we can see the order of operations in terms of how the different nodes are connected. That's what's really nice with N8n. It shows how the workflow combines together in harmony. Everything looks fine here. Let's just give this a name. Find similar tools. Great. I can save this. I can actually close this now. So if I come back to the main automation, let me just refresh this list here. So I'm going to choose it from the lists, and I'm going to choose find similar tools, and then we need to tell the tool what the input text is going to be, and notice that the input matches the input schema that I defined in the tool. Now at the moment I don't have any data to be working with, so if I just execute previous nodes, notice that I don't actually have any data that I can connect to here, and that's because the actual workflow hasn't been executed yet. So what I can do is if I just save this and test this. Now I'm going to put something completely random in here, literally just to break it. This will most likely come back with an error. As expected, this came back with an error because the input data wasn't really the kind of format that we were expecting, but that's fine because all we need to do was just run some data through this so that we can then reference that data point in the tool. So if I come back to the tool, I come over to mapping. Now I can simply just drag and drop the chat input, which is what we need, into this text box here. And that's everything that we need for this tool. So we can save this. Now let's start adding our other tools. So the second tool is the Estimate Annual Recurring Revenue tool. First thing, I'm going to go through exactly the same process once again. I'm going to create the tool, and actually I'm going to rename this overall workflow as well. AI Agent Business Consultant. Perfect. Let's create another tool now. Another N8n workflow. Let's rename this Estimate Annual Recurring Revenue. Let's add the description. Once again, the description is important. Let's copy this name, and then let's create another tool. This tool will follow exactly the same structure as before. So I'm going to skip through this fairly quickly. We simply want some input text. We want a basic LLM chain as the main node. Some JSON formatting issues there. Okay, here we go. Now we can drag this across. We're not specifying the output format. Let's add the prompt. Let's go to the expression editor, and now let's paste this prompt in. So what this second tool will be doing is estimating the annual recurring revenue of other tools that are currently on the market. So if I come back over here, paste this prompt in, that's essentially what I've summarized in the task here, and that's everything that this tool needs. I just need to add the LLM that I'm going to be using. Perfect. And let me just rename this tool as well. Estimate annual recurring. Perfect. I can test this if I want, and yeah, everything looks good. So now I can close this, and let's add this as a tool into the main agent workflow. Estimate annual recurring revenue, and I can put the text as the chat input. Perfect. So there's a few more tools that we need to add. The next tool is the Whitespace analysis. So let's copy the name and just following exactly the same process again. This is really simple. Let's change the name. Perfect. Let's get the description and let's create the tool. Once again, this is going to be called Whitespace analysis. We'll be using exactly the same JSON schema as before. Add the LLM chain, add the input text, and add the prompt. So once again, just to give a small explanation about the prompt. So this tool's task is to focus on whitespace analysis. So really the purpose of this tool is to identify unique selling points that I should focus on based on the information that it's gathered about similar tools and the information that it knows about my idea. We'll connect the LLM and we should be good to go. Let's just test this once again. Perfect. So now let's add this into our AI agent, whitespace analysis. Perfect. Now there are two more tools that I'm going to add. Research market size. So this tool is going to do some research to find out how big of a market potentially the industry is that I could be targeting for this business. I'm going to grab the description and I'm going to create the tool. You might be thinking, okay, this is a little bit repetitive, and in all honesty, it is, but actually this is the power of building tools-based agents. All of these tools are extremely modular. You can swap them out, you can change them, you can add more, you can reuse them. And that's the beauty of building an AI agent in this way. So I'm going to grab the prompt. And this isn't the only way to build an agent. There's lots of different ways of building agents and tools to build AI agents as well. I'm obviously using N8n now. Honestly, it's one of the best tools that you can use for building AI agents, but you can also build this from scratch using something like LangGraph or LangChain as well. So this tool is going to be focused on extrapolating the relevant industry that this business idea should focus on and performing research to estimate the total addressable market. The reason why I added this one is because when researching a business idea, you want to know what the opportunity is and you want to know how big the market is. If the market is very big, then there's potential that this could be a good idea. If it's not very big, then maybe it's something that you should pivot on. Okay, I'm going to connect this to the LLM as usual. Quick test, everything looks good. Perfect. And this one was the research market size. So let's just rename this workflow here. Perfect. Now let's add this in to the AI agent. Let's connect the input text. Brilliant. And the last tool is identify target audience. So this tool is going to be used to recommend the best target audience for the business idea. Okay, and let me copy the prompt. Now let's create the workflow. As before, just setting it up in exactly the same way. Let's just make things really nice, repeatable, and modular. Use the basic LLM, using the same input as before, and adding the prompt in. So once again, let me give a quick explanation to the prompt. Now with these tools, I find that you can make the prompts very, very specific, but the whole purpose of a tool is for it to be extremely atomic, meaning that it performs one very basic task, and that's it. Therefore, I find that if you start making the prompts really elaborate and very complex, it just adds more points of failure into the overall system. The beauty of the agentic framework is that you can give it room to think, and it is much more dynamic than a very linear approach to building these systems. Therefore, I find that keeping the prompts as simple as possible, keeping the tools as modular and as atomic as possible really helps. Connect the LLM, and let's save this. Great, so everything looks good here. Put the name over again, identify target audience. Now let's add this final tool into the main AI agent. Identify target audience. Good stuff. So we now have all of our tools. Let me just move this around a little bit just to make a bit of space and make it a little bit more clear. Okay, good. So if I come back to the documentation, we've added all of our tools. We've added the structured output parser. We've added the main AI agent node. The last thing that we need to do is we're not going to be adding this as a tool because we're going to be adding this as a separate node in the workflow. We're going to be adding the generate email report. So now we've added all of the tools that we need. We've also got our structured output parser, which will structure all of the results in a nice uniform fashion. We've got memory and we've got the underlying LLM model. Before we go any further, let's actually just test this and see how we get on. So in the GitHub repository, I've put some test ideas that you can use. Now, obviously you can use whatever idea you want with this AI agent, but let's just test it with one of these examples. So if I open up the chat window, let's just clear this and paste one of these examples. So this business idea is an app that analyzes my wardrobe and suggests outfits based on the weather, forecast, and my mood. I press enter. What's really nice with N8n is that you can see all of the nodes working and you can see how the AI agent is delegating to these nodes. One paradigm with AI agents is actually building a workforce. So you can imagine this AI agent could be a supervisor, if you like, and all of these tools could be further sub-agents that are doing the actual work that the supervisor is asking for. And what's really nice with this agentic framework is that it will continuously be passed backwards and forwards between the agent and the tools. And remember, the tools can be further AI agents. It will continually go back and forth between all of these nodes until it's happy with the success criteria. So it's actually quite nice just watching it, to be honest. You can see how it's connecting everything together, how everything is flowing through the system. And what's really nice with N8n is that it gives you a full log of exactly which tool it's used at every single step of the process. So here's the overall AI agent. You can see that it's called all of these tools at different parts of the process. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these. You can go through all of them and you can see the output at each of the different stages. I'm just going to go to the structured output at the end. And this is what it's given me, essentially. It's taken all of the information that's come back from the LLM models and it's formatted it in a really nice way. It's given me a success flag, i.e. this was successful or not successful. It's given me the idea that I initially gave. And then within the research object, it's given me the similar tools that it's found. So it's found similar tools out on the internet. It's given me the website. It's given me the estimated annual recurring revenue and the name of the business, which is great. It's done a Whitespace analysis, and actually it's not really found anything that's unique, which is quite interesting. Therefore, maybe this isn't the best market to go for. And it's told me the recommended industry, so the name of the industry and the market size in terms of total addressable market. Now, do keep in mind, for this demonstration, I'm using one of the older models, Haiku, which is great in terms of cost and speed. But in terms of the knowledge base that it has available and the quality of the outputs, it's not as good as some of the newer models that are available. So I'm not necessarily going to use this as the gospel truth. Realistically, if I was to use this in a production setting, I would upgrade it to one of the more expensive models. But even so, this is really just quite useful, even just to be able to see. And it's able to do it at a fraction of the time that it would have taken me to do it. So that's great. We've gotten the structured output, but as I said, that's not necessarily useful to a general user. What a general user would like is for me to be able to send an email to that person, or for me to format that information in an easily consumable way. So the next thing that I'm going to do, I'm not going to use a tool for this, but I'm going to create another node in the chain, which will generate the content for an email. So if I copy this name, so connecting to the AI agent, I'm actually just going to use a simple basic LLM chain. And this is because I don't necessarily need a whole agentic framework to do this. All I need is the inputs that have come from the AI agent in the previous step, and for the LLM just to summarize all those inputs essentially. Now, I cleared all of the data in the workflow, so I actually need to run the workflow again. Let me delete this node for now. Let's use the web extension that analyzes content and makes it more accessible for people with dyslexia. So let's run this. Let's let this run through so that we have some data that we can use in the next node. I'm not going to worry too much about the actual outputs here. Okay, that's great. I actually noticed that the Whitespace analysis keeps coming back with nothing. And the reason why is because I didn't add the chat input into this node. So let me just do that. And I'll save this. I'm not going to rerun it for now. But now that we've got the data in the workflow, now I can connect the LLM chain. So let's rename this, generate email report. Let me come back to the GitHub repository and let me copy the prompt that we need here. So we'll copy across the initial chat input text as the user message. And then in the chat messages, we'll add a system message, once again, using an expression for the prompt. Now, I've included some JavaScript in this data block to then format the data that comes from the AI agent in the appropriate way. So what you actually get is a really nice preview on the right-hand side about how this prompt will be passed to the LLM. On the previous example, it's using the previous data that's collected. What it will show for the similar tools is a nice formatted text block which goes through the similar tools. It describes the name, it describes the business name, and it describes the website URLs. If I just simply reference the tools, it doesn't format the data very well, and actually it literally just tells it that there's some objects here. So you need to kind of use some JavaScript here to format it in a nice way. And now that we've run the data through the system, we get all of the outputs from the AI agent that we can actually utilize from all the different nodes in the workflow. So that's great. Okay, so I'm happy with this. All the relevant inputs are there, so that's good. Let's save this. We just need to connect the underlying model as usual. Let's just use Haiku once again. Make this a little bit more tidy. Let's move this over a bit. Now let's run this again. If I come back to the chat window and I just press up, I can just reference the previous message that I sent. So let's run this. So you can see the generate email report node being executed. It's obviously calling out to the LLM to summarize all the content and put it into a reasonable format. And in the generate email report node, when you get a chance to look at the actual prompt, as explained before, essentially the task is really just to summarize all of the findings that I provide in the data block below, and to do it in less than 3,000 words. So if I come to the logs once again, and I look at the generate email report node, I can scroll down and I can see the entire report that it's actually put together, which is amazing. That's exactly what I need. So the final piece of the puzzle is for me to connect one more node, which is actually going to send me an email. So for this, N8n has a whole bunch of different nodes that you can use. I'm going to use Gmail, and I essentially just want to send a message using Gmail. Once again, I've connected my Gmail account. You will have to do this if you want to use your own Gmail account as well, or any email account that you wish to use. There are some additional steps that are involved in order to get a client ID and client secret, so the credentials that you need to connect your Gmail account. The link that you'll need to complete that step is included in the GitHub repository, but I won't focus on that too much for now. All you need to do is simply enter the information that you want to be sent in the email. So I'm going to put my email address. I'm going to put the subject. Here's your business idea report. I'm going to use just a simple text-based email for now. because the output from the generate email report node is text, it's not HTML. I could have asked for the generate email report to format the content as HTML, and then I'm going to drag across the text. I don't think there are any other options that I need to include here. I could include some attachments or CCs, that sort of thing, but that's it for now. And that is it. So let's test this out. Let's clear the memory of the chat and let's start fresh. So I'm going to copy the business idea. I'm going to come back to my workflow, open the chat and paste the chat in here. So we'll see the automation working away as it usually does, executing the different nodes that it needs, delegating the different tasks to the different LLM tools, which is really nice. And then as usual, once it's done with this, it will then output the data into that structured output format that we want, which will then pass it onto the generate email report node, which will then use that structured output data and format it into a report no longer than 3,000 words. And then finally, it will send me an email. Amazing. So everything has been executed. So the only thing to do now really is to check my email to see whether or not I got the report. Okay, and as I can see, I have gotten the email here. So if I open this up, and here is the report that's been generated by the LLM. Now, of course, I could have formatted this in a certain way by asking the LLM to generate HTML or to add some formatting options. But for now, this is great. This is everything that I need to essentially make a decision on whether or not this is a good business idea to go with. And the key here is that this isn't to replace necessarily the job of a business consultant in this. And the key here really is the speed at which it's able to do this. When starting a business and when executing on an idea, being lean and being fast and executing quickly and failing quickly is one of the most important things that you can do. You don't want to spend months on something to then find out that actually it's the wrong direction to be going in. You need to fail fast, you need to iterate as quickly as possible. And with tools like this, with AI agents, it gives anyone the ability to do this really quickly. So that's it. That's the end-to-end AI agent that we've built. The most important thing to consider here is that everything that I've shown you is extremely modular. In this example, we're building a business consultant that gives us a report on a business idea that we may have. But all of these tools, this entire workflow is reusable and is modular. You can connect this to another agent who might be part of a wider team that's consulting a business on various different tasks. You can swap out LLM models really easily. You can add more tools or more integrations. So the possibilities really are endless. And as I said before, you don't necessarily need to use this tool to build this agent either. The methodology and the framework is exactly the same if you're to use another agent building tool, or even if you were to build this tool from scratch in code. So the final thing I'll show you is, obviously we've been testing this agent in the chat window here. If I come into the chat node and I copy this address and open it up into a new tab. So the last thing I'll show you is how to actually access this chat interface on a public URL. Now, obviously, I've deployed this locally on localhost, so it's not going to be a fully public URL. But if I hosted this N8n instance on a server somewhere, I can then access it on that server address. So if I make this workflow active, I've copied the address from the chat window. If I then paste this address in, what I get is a really nice user interface that I can actually use here to then interact with the automation. So that brings me to the end of this tutorial. I hope you found this useful, and I hope you're able to see what we've done in this tutorial and identify opportunities not only to use this as your own business consultant, to use the modules and use the concepts that we've learned in other use cases that you may want to try as well. So thank you very much. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and let me know what you'd like to see me build next time.